What's up, everybody? I'm Justin Abrams. That guy right there is Mike Rispoli. We run a company called Cause of a Kind. We build software for everybody else who can't build it for themselves. It's kind of timely. We're going to get all into how AI has changed our business. It's the same old business with a totally new way of operating. And so I think that really approaches like a practical way of all of us. How do we evolve? And how do we build businesses? And how do we use modern tooling? And so we've built this business we're going to celebrate 10 years here in June. And so the first 5 years of that business, we moonlit against our careers, and like that was the natural landscape. We could use the things that we were doing professionally and do it for other people, which was fantastic. COVID came along. It offered us unprecedented time to go and build this business in parallel to moonlighting our careers. We saw an unbelievable opportunity to leverage our homes, take out an SBA loan, and then built a nice big business. Now we run a 7-figure organization with a very lean team. And we're going to tell you all about how we crush this business and try to find our way through all of this. Hopefully it's valuable to all of you too. I didn't put the clicker, so you'll click. Cool. If you want to get in touch with us, I got lots of QR codes. It's shameless plug night. So all the things that we have built, all the things that we do, you will see a lot of that material in today's presentation. There's a lot more surface area. The QR codes lead to all sorts of Easter eggs, ways to get in touch with us, ways to participate in our world. Everything that we build, everything that we do is value for all of you. That was the only way that I could figure out how to make something in the world. Exactly what Nancy was talking about is make friends, be valuable, and the next person you meet could change your life, right? So that's us. Let's just talk a little bit about the transition, right? Like anybody else here an agency owner? Yeah, cool. And you all have lived through some type of a transition. The advent of AI is like an interesting one for us right now. It is the age of do more with less, which is kind of a theme for us. We have always been in business of do more with less. We have always doubled down on the idea of speed and quality. I do not compete on price. I'm your McLaren. Don't call me if that's not what you're looking for, right? So the whole goal for us was to do as much as we possibly could with hyper-talented people and work on talent density. People come to us to get the job done once and correctly, on budget, on time. And so that's never more valuable than today. And so we have a couple key concepts, right? Like transforming our operations through AI. That's all relatively new, right? And every day, me as a non-technical stakeholder of this business, I'm learning for new technical efficiency, new tools, new workflows, new things that I can implement on my side of the business. And then of course, Mike as our CTO and his team are all of course adopting the things that you'll naturally know, and we can talk about those, how we exploit that stuff. Now, Mike, tell me a little bit about how the industry used to operate. What was our flow? What was our intake process? Take me through sales all the way to delivery.
Yeah, so I think that this is kind of an interesting moment because we used to operate kind of on these fixed scopes. That was how we started. That was how I learned. All the agencies I worked at, project would come in. It would be like some kind of an RFP. It would be really big. You'd go and compete against maybe 3 or 4 other agencies. You'd make a fixed scope. What started to happen was I would scope those against how long I thought to do it. And I thought that's how I did it at all the agencies I worked. I was on the ground. We would do that. We would pitch. We'd win the pitch. And we would lose money because we would underscope everything. And a lot of people were picking us because we were cheaper. And you were competing against much bigger agencies. And we quickly realized that we had to raise our prices. We were getting beat up on price all the time. And so we kind of started to tend towards this time and materials model because it felt safer. Especially if you leverage your home, you take out an SBA loan. If any of you have been down that path, you'll know that safe business feels really good after a little while. So you're happy with that. But then you deal with being commoditized. So there was always an agency whose hourly rate was cheaper than ours. So this idea that software suddenly costs nothing, code suddenly costs nothing, was really nothing new to us. We've been battling this for 10 years. There was always somebody who could work for $5 an hour or $10 an hour. Some of them would even pitch us with the idea, that, okay, we're gonna come to Cause of a Kind and you could hire our $10 an hour engineers. And that was where the speed and quality thing came from, because if we keep doing this race to the bottom, we're never gonna get to value-based pricing. So what changed? We had changed long before AI. We had really tried to do this more of a subscription model, productized service model that we had seen online that got people away from thinking about us based on the billable hour but still provided the security that Agile could provide to us without kind of doing these big scopes and being off by a huge margin. Because we had heard of very big agencies that are kind of like household names in the agency space. I've heard of them having to eat the cost of things for 6 months to a year because they were off on scope. So we knew we never wanted to go back there. So we ended up with week over week and month over month products that really didn't specify hours. They just specified outcomes. And we tried to do as small a measurement as we could because we always felt like that cut was more accurate. AI comes along, and now it's been really great to us because we were on this plane ahead of time selling against a really tough market. And suddenly that small cut, you could get a lot done. In about 2 weeks, you could build nearly a complete product. And within a month, we were doing things that would take 3 to 6 months before. So suddenly the industry has shifted. And now a lot of the outsourced agencies are looking at us like, how did you do that? Because suddenly the billable hour is no longer the unit of sale. And that really changed things because it's kind of this value-based pricing moment that almost made it easy when we were pushing this boulder uphill for so long.
And so let's talk a little bit about our sales process. Mike and I have an interesting relationship. We take every single call together. Every call for every customer, every sales call, every prospecting call, discovery call, every call. And that's how we spend most of our time. Mike, as a CTO, will tell you that the job of a CTO is to be the best technical salesman in the room. And so that's how we leverage each other. We run this as a solutions engineering team. And so that gives us the advantage on a call to do rapid prototyping. I'm in the age right now where in the length of a call, transcription to output, I can generate, is this what you were looking at? And so never before was that possible. It was always a lengthy discovery process. Let me go through an intake. Let's build you a prototype. Let's do a lengthy design phase. Let's do your architecture and flow charting. That is all still happening, but not on my first 2 calls, not before I have a relationship. All that really critical time to prove our speed, to prove the quality is now up front. And so that's really been essential to us in shortening our sales cycle. If you're an agency owner, you know that you can have a very variant sales cycle. Some things close in 3 days, some things close in 3 years. Like, that's just kind of how this thing goes. So this has allowed us to do some incredible things. And then, of course, as you all know, the output from all of this stuff lets us do the things that we've all been maybe historically lazy about. One of those things is documentation, redundancy through the team. We typically kick things off and then hand them off. So all of these luxuries that have come about through AI as an implementation have now enabled us to run a successful business where it's less educating from Mike down and it's more distribution of the material that we've collected, even if the engineer on the project is not on the initial call. Would you say?
Well, my code was always self-documenting,
yeah, right,
but I'm just...
Right. Next slide. Anybody here fancy themselves a 10X developer? That's the original New York City 10X developer. Come on, man. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about our service offering because we have a unique model. Most of the times when you think about agencies or developer shops, you think of like maybe a nearshore or an offshore experience. We talk a lot about time and materials. You talk a lot about fixed estimates and variable scopes. We did away with that. It's a big takeaway. If you're like in the consulting business and you're trying to figure out how to like monetize your value, you're trying to take on multiple gigs, but there's only so many hours in a week, this formula is literally for you. Mike and I built this ages ago. Has anybody ever heard of on Twitter Design Joy? Right. This is nothing new. This is us being good students about how does somebody else on the internet productize a service that was commoditized. And so for us, we built a whole suite of things, the productized core offering. You can see all of it on our homepage, on our website. I have full transparent pricing. My model is transparent, modeled after a SaaS company. And that's what our careers were in, was building in SaaS companies. And the only way that I knew how to sell the service was to wrap it in a pretty bow, productize it, make no guarantees of the output, but I'm your guy. If you're not happy, you cancel, just like your subscription to Salesforce. And so the next thing that we do from that is the product and marketing as a service. So I get to say, what are all of the tangential things that you may or may not be using today? What are all of those things wrapped up in a little product that you could take advantage of? So you're not just hiring me as a coder, you're not just hiring, or Mike as a coder, and you're not just hiring me as a marketer, you're hiring an agency with a product that may meet your needs. And so as a service, this has become a valuable thing for people to subscribe to, because if I'm done with coding because AI moved too fast, what's the next thing that I can leverage this master service partner for? And so again, this is about upselling your skill. It's hard enough to get a customer. It's really hard to keep a customer. So this is just ways of thinking about your offering without worrying about your hourly rate. The last piece is really what we leverage Mike for, which has to do with the fractionalization of the CTO. This is like nothing new, but what happens for a lot of us, a lot of times for us, is people come to us, typically a non-technical stakeholder that's looking for a fractional counterpart, or rather doesn't know that that's what they need. And so tell us a little bit about like the fractional CTO capacity and how we do it. It's a little different.
Yeah, well, the hardest thing that people go through is there was a period where the fractional CTO came about for us is nobody wanted to invest in a founder that didn't have a CTO. And so we had a lot of people who were kind of bootstrapping and couldn't raise money. And this kept happening over and over and over again. And so kind of out of necessity, I said, I'll pitch with you as your CTO just so we can keep you on the road and keep moving forward. And that was sort of through the pandemic onward. And now it's come into more of this product role, which is the founder's vision is often so big now that it's really, really hard for them to get the messaging right and the storytelling right. And so what's happening is there's a lot to build, and you almost exhaust their ability to build it very quickly. So within 3 months, let's say you build this entire product, but the thing looks like Salesforce when you're done, or it's really, really pretty, but how do I carve the niche out? How do I explain this to an investor? How do I tell them what's the big idea when I've put 10 big ideas into one product? So that kind of is those second two slides. The product and marketing as a service, which is don't build that big because you're going to have a really hard time selling it. And fractional CTO, I'll help you make tech decisions, but I'll also help you sell this thing, and I'll be on the hook in the room with you when you're doing this type of stuff, because it is very hard if you're non-technical to answer a lot of the questions that come up now around security and whatnot. So that is also a big part of this, is I can help answer the security, but also help keep that messaging tight and not make the investor feel like you're going in 20 directions at once.
Let's keep it going. So marketing infiltration. I wanted to talk a little bit about what it takes to stand out in a crowd, right? Like, we're in a commoditized industry as an agency. There's an agency on every street corner. I kind of feel like a nail salon sometimes. So how do you stand out, and how do you own your audience? And I think that's a theme. Nancy was talking a little bit about that, like who here is putting out content, and I raised both hands because for me, that's the lifeblood of our business. That's how I stay top of mind to all of you after this event and remain relevant to your decisions that you're making on a daily basis. So a little bit about the engine that we make. And this is, everything that I do is AI enabled. It used to be prohibitive, where we didn't do any of this stuff because it just wasn't possible. So now it's taking creative and taste, strategy from my career as an omni-channel marketer, with agent profile behind me that allows me to do multiple things at once, as you all know, but in the marketing stack, which is, of course, our lead gen funnel. So things like dynamic content creation, that's taking one piece of core content, splitting it up in 10 different ways. It could look like clipping. It could look like short form content from long form. It could look like, you guys know, I don't have to rattle it. Multi-channel distribution. It's enabled us to syndicate, create one content somewhere and then distribute. That's like been an amazing strategy that like you wouldn't have been able to do historically, because I would have had to write something custom for each channel. That's just not sustainable. Now it is. Getting insights. It's like being able to query. I'm big right now on Zo Computer. Zo Computer is allowing for my workflow in the cloud. It's like just my automation and enablement that I really didn't even have it 6 months ago. This is all new. And so you guys can read the rest of the slides, but really what this has to do with is scalability, is turning out our creative ideas, is experimenting more, failing faster, getting more data. This is really what this is about. And so I think we have a couple of slides left. I want to share with you the things that we distribute, a fraction of the things that we distribute. Yep, you can go. And so one of the things that's been really exciting for me and Mike, we got lots of ideas, lots of side quests, right? Who has a full-time job and just not enough time to work on your hobbies? So like now, more than ever before, not only do we carry more client load than ever with a leaner team and higher output with higher revenue, but I also get to build all of our side quests. And that could be a blessing and a curse. Got to maintain all of our side quests.
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes.
Hopefully nobody buys all of them, and then,
don't buy
then it
all
works.
of
Yeah.
Yeah. But there you go. Lots of QRs, codes, lots of plugs. But all of these things are built because of the advent of what we're living through right now. And so our acceleration for our curiosities is one of the valuable things that we distribute for our business. And we use software as marketing material. We build things that we see on the internet, things that people may or may not buy but have curiosity around. We stood up an entire podcast around killing SaaS products that are famous in your life. So this just allows us to kind of play into what is happening in popular culture, literally, and to create our version of it, right?
Yeah, well, and even as a developer, one thing that helps is your open source stuff becomes marketing.
Yeah.
And I saw this at a lot of other agencies, and so I started to kind of adopt that, which is even if this thing is small and maybe another gem already exists that does it or another NPM package, just having it associated with yourself, your name, your kind of unique take on the problem actually helps. And one of our customers did come from a technical article I wrote, and his words were, I didn't understand any of it. I'm not a programmer, but I need this thing you built. I need that thing. And so I was like, great, I'll build it for you. And so that was pretty awesome.
So like this event, right? We came here, this is my second, this is Mike's third Artificial Ruby event. We met Scott. Scott lives on Long Island, and now we're cross-pollinating each other's events. The reason why we bring this up is because all this AI talk, Nancy talked about this, there's nothing more important than meeting up in person, sharing ideas, creating new relationships. But our event, just like your event, is all powered by AI. And so all the conversations are about AI, it's the curiosities that are happening, and everybody is showing up with a little bit of a wrinkle on education. And so I host this event to learn as much as I educate. And so I encourage everybody, if you live on Long Island, if you're interested in commuting to Long Island, it's a growing event. It's a little bit smaller of a turnout, smaller of a venue than this, but we're growing and it's exciting. And just one of the other side quests powered by AI that we enjoy. I think last but not least is the podcast. And the reason why we bring up the podcast, it's kind of a culminating idea, is like owning your voice, owning your distribution. Distribution is everything. It is the hardest part. Building stuff is no longer hard anymore. I mean, complex problems, sure. But the distribution, finding people to buy it, finding people to care about it, that's the complex part. 5 years ago, I decided to create a podcast with you so we could talk about the trials and tribulations of just eating shit along the way. And that started and meandered. And eventually, it kind of turned into, well, like, I want to have the stories of our founders that come through our studio, and I want to give them their first piece of marketing material, and I want them to have something in the archives of their story when they were first building. 700 episodes later and 5 shows. Now we have global distribution. Now we have attention from crazy places. When I meet somebody, they'll be like, oh, I saw your show. What's your name? They don't even know who I am. Interesting. But never more practical to start it up. It is entirely powered by AI. It begins in Riverside. Claude helps me distribute, and I have a couple other workflow agents that help me push and syndicate content across platforms. I run it all on my own at zero expense. Only the subscription for Riverside and Claude is distributed across everything else I do. So I encourage you, if you're curious about this type of distribution, if this type of content creation seems like your jam, come and talk to us. This is something that we have like really doubled down on, put a lot of time into, because the value that it adds back to us, our brand, it'll live forever on the internet to the end of the internet. And what do you think?
Well, if you're wondering, I mean, 4 years, right?
Yeah,
Grew to about 6,000 followers. In the last 4 months, it grew to 166,000 followers. So if you're doing this and you're like, is anybody listening? Don't worry about it. Just keep doing it because it does eventually work. There's like a Gary Vee method to this, and you got to just stick it out. And so that's what I would recommend. This one's my project.
This is last but not least, which was a value add to you guys, but a little look into how we think about upskilling talent for our last slide.
Yeah. This is actually something I built kind of for fun, and then I ended up liking it and releasing it. It's called Code Dojo. It uses your code agent. At the time it used Claude Code. I'll probably have to switch it to Codex because that's a 2-week development. But it's very easy. It basically puts you back in the driver's seat, issues you problems, gets you coding every day. One of the things I found from our staff and myself with using agents all day is you sort of start to lose your sharpness a little bit and your skill, and you start to forget, and new things are coming out in the languages that you used to know really well, and you're like, oh, I didn't really know about that. Like Donnie's not here tonight. He's like a CSS ninja. And I was like, I used to be really good at CSS, and I just like stopped learning it. And then I was like, well, maybe I should do this. So Code Dojo will handle any language. In fact, I'm kind of building a version that will handle other topics outside of coding. So that's kind of been a little bit of a side quest for me. But I encourage people with all this talk for AI, take some time to bang away on the keyboard, type some code, and just kind of spend some time in that world, because I think it's helpful.
Thanks, gang.
Thanks, everyone.